Hey everyone, my name is Seth. This is the Books Business Growth Podcast where we talk to Amazon sellers, e-commerce entrepreneurs, and business owners about their journey, what makes them tick, and why they have been successful. So without further ado, please sit back and enjoy the show. And we are live. Victor Feliciano, welcome to the show. Hope I pronounced your surname correctly.
Yes, my surname, my last name, for those in the U.S., pronounced correctly. Excellent. Very good. Thanks for having me on, Seth.
No, I very much appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy man, which is why I'd love to jump straight in. Would you like to kind of introduce yourself, a little bit about your background, what you do now, and kind of how you got into Amazon again, I guess? I know that's a lot to digest.
Okay, so on my background, I have a management degree, and I started, my corporate career, way back when in New York City, and I was one of those guys. I really did like my work. A lot of people don't. I wasn't one of them. I liked what I did, but I think in the end, I think maybe not everybody, but a lot of people do have that itch to start their own business. Very difficult in that situation. I had a 2-hour commute door to door to get into Midtown Manhattan one way. Anyway, and then I moved states and I moved on, and that was in the hospitality industry. And then I moved on into the insurance industry. And again, I really liked my position and, very secure jobs or whatever. But in both instances, I was laid off, right? They had job cuts, all that for various reasons. So that was my background. I think while I was doing those, I did have, a little bit of a background as far as doing a side business, right? A side hustle. So I think I started actually selling on eBay. I'm going to date myself here. I sold my very first item on eBay in 1998. I remember reading about it in like People magazine, which I don't even read, but for some reason. And I sold something before you could even put pictures on, or at least I didn't put a picture on, and I think I took a check. I was taking checks back then. So, but I kind of liked it. I said, oh, this is really cool. You can sell stuff, right? And then I did a little bit of buying some stuff on eBay, and this is even probably before I even heard of doing online arbitrage. But I put that to rest, and then I actually did start my own business side hustle. I like to play pool. So billiards, I don't know what they call it out where you are, but it's big in England as well. So I started my own pool business, billiards league and all that. So that was a pretty good side hustle for a while. And then I sold that business. And then after I got laid off on my background of, and I was like an IT director, I managed a lot of people. And I said, well, now I've got time on my hands, right? But I want an income. So let me look into different businesses. That was my mindset, like from the beginning. I'm going to, just look at a business. I didn't know what it was going to be. So I think that's where I first started off. And then from there, I said, I actually, got out a piece of paper. So what kind of business do I want to run, right? And I really said to myself, I want a business that I can work anytime, anywhere. Because I really did think about doing some, other businesses, but I wrote down pros and cons, which I encourage people to do. It's kind of old-fashioned on a regular piece of paper. It kind of helps you take a step back and see what's going on. So then I looked into Amazon. It was really just doing research online and looking at all kinds of different business models that are out there. And I started with Amazon in 2016, and I started doing private label, which I'm sure most people who are listening to this probably know about private label, or at least have heard of it. So started off doing private label, did that for a couple of years, and I don't know how much depth you want me to go into, Seth, about private label, because I can, but how big of a private label business I had, I don't know, it's debatable. I was importing stuff from China. I actually did entire containers, having them shipped over to the U.S., and I will say this, although I do use books now, that's what I do now, all these business models, they really do work. But in the end, private label is a business that you can work anytime, anywhere. But in my opinion, there are so many, it is much higher risk in my view and the things I've experienced. than doing something like used books. And it's not as sexy either, right? Oh, I'm, building a brand. There's all these other things that go into doing private label, and it's much more complicated than I had thought originally. But it can be very rewarding. So then I pivoted kind of from private label to what I'm doing now.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. There's a lot to dive into there, but
Sure.
I think seeing as you just talked about private label, that would be kind of interesting, because I'm sure a lot of people listening, a lot of people who do OA, RA, or books may have either started with private label or at least looked into it, or think maybe the grass is greener with private label. And you've said that you did entire containers of private label, which makes me think you were relatively successful at it, which is why I'm wondering, why did you leave that? Or did you leave that? Do you still do a little bit of PL? Like, how did that develop from doing entire containers to books? Or
Okay, so a couple things with private label. So my suggestion, if you're going to do private label, I strongly recommend that you take a course. Now, I don't sell a course. I don't even have a course to recommend. But I did take a course. What I'm getting at is I did take a course on doing private label. And some of those things that I learned there are still applicable today, but it was definitely worth every penny. So I don't recommend doing private label by going onto Facebook groups and asking for advice. You can certainly do that, absolutely. But if you want to shorten your time and make, you're going to pay for things one way or the other, right? You're either going to pay for it in time or making mistakes for a lot of things. So with private label, it's a very, very serious business. Don't just think, oh, I'm going to buy something off of Alibaba for $1.50 and sell it for $19 or $20 or whatever, and I'm going to make this amount of money. There's way more involved with it than that. So to answer your question, one thing I didn't know, and they didn't really teach you too much in the course that I took, and things have evolved in Amazon quite a bit with private label, is I did not realize how cutthroat of a business it really is. You have, and I don't, some people may or may not know this, there's all kinds of things that go on. You have hijacked listings. I found, I paid for professional pictures to be taken of my products. I found those then later on Alibaba and Alibaba Express. So people, and then you have a lot of competition. And the other really big thing is Amazon. If you're going to do private label, usually, and there's no definite, there's no, one size fits all, but PPC advertising is a big deal. That is advertising on Amazon so you have to factor all these things in. And, at the end of the day, the margins just became too small, and really the headaches became way too big. And then you can get, I think the biggest risk, if anyone's going to go into private label, go and look at some of the, there's entire businesses out there on helping people get their accounts reinstated, right? You've probably heard of that, Seth. And, there's a reason for that, because, Amazon will shut down an entire brand very quickly for a variety of reasons, and many of which you as a seller had nothing to do, you didn't do anything wrong. And that has happened to $1 million sellers. And the other thing, there's people out there that are doing private label that, they're doing upwards well over $500,000 in sales a year, yet they can't quit their full-time jobs because, the margins are pretty small. And like I said, for me, the headaches just got too big. And then you've got competition coming in, which is part of the business. So then from there, Seth, to kind of answer, how did I pivot? So I said, let me look at other things. I know this is working, right? I know this is going to work, right? And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but a lot of other people doing it. I said, I'm going to figure it out. And it all started probably with just, and I remember the girl, I wish I knew her name. And I did reach out to her. I have not heard from her, but she talked about flipping books on Amazon, doing online arbitrage using Keepa alerts. And that's how I first got hooked into it. And then I went from there. And then, I just, I applied logic where, okay, used books, they're plentiful. And then I find out, of course, I've gotten a ton of knowledge since I started doing used books. But from there, it just fell into place, and it's become, over time, it's become easier and easier for me to do this business. So I've gotten to where I want to go. I don't really want to say I'm successful, right? To me, success is never final. I'm the type of person that always wants to improve the way I do things and improve the service that I have.
No, that's great. I totally agree with you on the success front. You know, I guess if I looked at myself a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would think, oh, I'm definitely successful. But now I'm thinking I'm definitely not. You know, there's always so many people above you, right? There's always a certain amount of people below you, and I guess it's just about running your own race. But so I'm interested in more. Sorry, yeah, go on.
No. Well, let me just expand upon that point. Like, I think there's going to be people out there that are watching this video that are just starting out, and, you know, a couple of years down the road, they may be bigger than you and I, right, combined. That definitely can happen. So, you don't compare yourself to other people, and, you know, just go. Everyone's got their own journey, and everyone's going to do it a little bit differently, and that's fine.
Yeah, definitely. Because focusing on other people, it causes you to get envious and jealous potentially as well, and you don't know what's happening behind closed doors. Like you were saying with private label, you might be doing really good sales, or it looks like really good sales, but if your profit margin is only 2%, then you're not necessarily doing that well, right? So people need to always be conscious that you don't know what's going on behind closed doors and run your own race. But
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I'd love to know. So the transition was kind of, you were doing PL, it was a bit of a headache. Did you just like slowly stop ordering as many products and then start buying more books, or did you like go really hard into the books? Like, did you buy a ton of them straight away? Like, I'm super interested to know how you dove into books.
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. No, it was definitely gradual. I couldn't even tell you at this point, because it's been a while, you know, how gradual it was. But I know that I had people working for me doing both sides of those businesses at the same time. There were things you do on private label, you know, checking advertising, doing all kinds of things, and then also going in and, you know, doing book research and all these other things. So it was gradual. You know, if I had to guess, Seth, and, you know, I actually keep, maybe people should do this, I'll give you a little tip, a history log of my business from one day I started. You know, I opened my checking account. So every like month or something significant happens in my business, I'll just log it down just so that we kind of remember. So maybe just a tip for people out there, you know, put it on a simple spreadsheet so you kind of can look back and see. And, you know, if and when I ever write a book, I'll have some details I can put out there, right?
That's actually a really interesting thing that I've never heard of before. And like, I read a ton of business books, right? I've read a ton of business books, and I've never actually heard someone say you're essentially writing a diary for your business, which is it totally makes sense, but I've never thought to do that.
Yeah, I should charge for that tidbit. Well, you know, part of it though is too. I'll give you an example, Seth, where you know, we're with Amazon, things change, right, all the time. Like, for example, they just came out with, they're going to add a 5% fee on, right? So maybe that's just something that's not, I didn't really do, but it's something I may want to look back on a year from now and say, when did Amazon do that? And I can quickly find it because it's in a spreadsheet, or it's properly, you know, documented. So I'm an organized guy, right? So that's why I do something like that. But it is very helpful to go, you know, and it just takes 2 seconds to log something, and then you can go back and look back, you know, hey, this is the day I hired my first VA, or, you know, whatever. And you know, you give yourself a sense of accomplishment on you know, what you've done too.
Yeah, totally. And you do forget how much stuff happens, especially with Amazon, the amount of new things they introduce, the amount of obstacles potentially to get over. Like, right. I mean, in a couple of years, I might have even forgotten about restock limits, right? If I hadn't taken note of it somewhere. So, you know, it totally makes sense. But
yeah,
you just mentioned hiring first VA. That's actually always an interesting topic for me, because I'm kind of in the newbie phase of hiring VAs. So you had I don't know how big your team was with PL, but obviously you had your private label products and you had a team there. But did you transition those VAs onto the books business, or did you have separate employees there? How did you approach that?
I believe I had them doing both. And then at some point, I think I hired some people, and then they were only doing books, or they might only be doing certain aspects of my business. So, and then, you know, I did have, I think in the beginning, I think I did have them do both. You know, they'll just do whatever I need done.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But and I suppose because you had the history of your billiards business, I absolutely adore playing pool. But billiards and pool are different, by the way. Just a little side note.
Billiards is
Oh,
where
that's a
there's
good.
two.
Yeah, you know your stuff then, right? So billiards actually doesn't have pockets, and
Yeah, it's got,
pool
yeah.
has 6 pockets on the table. Yeah, and then there's snooker, right? That's God bless you guys for playing snooker out there. That is a really tough game.
Yeah, the table's about 3 times as big as a normal pool table.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. But so I assume you kind of gathered all your hiring skills from that business, because I assume you needed to have a team for that business.
Well, I'll say this: there are. It's different when you work for a big company, especially I work for big corporate Fortune 100 companies, and there's a beauty of doing hiring when you're the boss and you're actually the one cutting the check, right? It's great that I hired lots of people in my corporate job, but there were certain things you couldn't do in the corporate environment that you can do on your own. I'll give you an example. Like I used to run a national guest service center for Marriott, and I'm hiring these people, and I talked to my boss, and I said, I'm planning on, hiring them and giving them this test. And I was told I couldn't do that. I'm sorry, let me not shake out Marriott. It wasn't Marriott, it was a different company. But regardless, I was told I could not give them, a competency test on how to do data entry or whatever the heck it was, just because that was the corporate red tape, right? So I don't have that now, right? I can do as I please when I hire these people. So I do give them, tests to take and to try to get the cream of the crop of the folks that I'm looking to hire.
It makes sense. That's something that I should probably do. I haven't really thought that in depth about hiring, even though I know it makes super important.
You would be absolutely surprised how the difference. You can have a candidate that's got really, really good resume, but give them a typing skill, and it sort of separates, the men from the boys, so to speak. And so there's it's you got to be accurate, and you need to be fast usually, right? And so that's what I needed, and those are some of the things I look for.
Absolutely. So let's dive into books a bit, I think, just because that's what the audience are going to want to know about when they're speaking to Master Book Flipper. So you've been selling books for, so you started private label in 2016, but when did the books, what year did you kind of get serious with the books?
I don't know when I got serious. I started selling some books in 2017, I'm sure. And probably in 2018 is when I started, using software and all those things. And you're gonna make some mistakes along the way, right? That's par for the course for any business, really.
So can you give me some examples of the sort of mistakes you made? Because I started selling on January 2018, but didn't get serious with books until about September that time. So we're kind of similar trajectory there.
Right. Okay, you asked what are some of the mistakes? Okay, so one of the biggest mistakes a couple of mistakes you can make, and I tell my customers, like in the welcome video, first of all, don't buy books that you don't know that you cannot sell, that if you're restricted on. So that's like, nobody wants to do that. I know there's some folks out there that will resell the books for you, but from a long-term business angle, that's not something I recommend as a bread and butter. So that's like the first thing. Don't buy books. So know that you could be restricted on a book. The other thing is, people heard about textbooks, right? Buying textbooks, and we're starting to come up on really the buying season coming up for this coming summer. So what you don't want to do is people can get excited in the middle of textbook season when they see these huge profit opportunities. But what they may not realize is that sometimes the book is elevated in price, even though, what am I trying to make this simple? I know you understand, Seth, right? But, the price is elevated because it is textbook season, but textbook season is going to end in 2 or 3 weeks, presumably. And you go by the Keepa charts on all this stuff, and suddenly the demand is going to fall off. So even though that book looked very profitable at that moment, it takes time to buy the book, to get it sent into Amazon to you or your prep center. And then by that time, maybe the demand has gone down, and then that elevated price of FBA has gone down significantly. So, and I just remember doing that where I'm saying, kind of almost wishing that, I think I'll get it in there very quickly and it'll sell very quickly. So you just need to be cautious during textbook season not to buy a book like that, because you'll end up sitting on it for quite a while. You could sit on it for quite a while. So that's just one basic thing, but I can go into more depth certainly.
Yeah, I mean those are obviously the big ones. I guess another thing that I would say would be don't necessarily jump in on textbooks which are maybe like the 14th or 15th edition, because sometimes they'll go crazy high in September and then they'll just die in January and stuff like that. So you maybe be a little bit cautious with certain genres, right? I found that certain like economics, like law, like those sort of genres tend to dive a bit. And I know there's obviously exceptions to the rule, but I've noticed that.
Yeah, absolutely, especially the law books. I think some people come into this business thinking that it's just about textbooks, and it's really not. Most of my inventory is non-textbooks. I really like doing non-textbooks. Of course, textbooks are great, but non-textbooks sort of just sell, randomly throughout the year, and you don't have to really worry as much. When you have textbooks, you need to be a little more conscious when it comes to repricing. The timing can be very, very important, because you don't want to have a book not sell during textbook season, and then the demand goes down quite a bit. And like you said, Seth, and really, I think this holds true for most textbooks. Over time, textbooks go down in price. I find that to be not the case as much with non-textbooks. So that's why when you get try to sell them in that season if you can.
Definitely. Okay, so yeah. That's interesting you say that, because that's similar to me. I started out pretty much buying 80% textbooks, maybe 85%. And then over time, every single month, it drops down a little bit more, because I want that consistent, that consistent sales revenue, right? I want to know that I'm making X dollars in February, and then in March, maybe it will increase a little bit, and hopefully it's going to just scale up over time. And obviously in September it should go up a little bit, but I don't necessarily need it to double all the other revenue figures for the year. So no, it's interesting you say that. But do you know what sort of percentage roughly you are textbooks, or?
Well, right now I'm buying a lot of textbooks because we're coming up on textbook season, so that there's no right exact answer to that. As we speak, I might be 65% non-textbooks, right? But maybe as I go into textbook season, maybe I'm at 70% textbooks. And then during textbook season, you should be selling a lot of textbooks, as I do, and then the percentage will immediately go down. So, but I don't solely rely upon textbooks at all. Yeah, the other thing with textbooks is, you have to look at your schedule a little bit. You are going to spend a little bit more time repricing, if you want to maximize your profits during textbook season. And, I isolate, do a lot of different things with repricing, but some of the more expensive ones, you're going to want to even spend more time repricing them or looking at them more frequently, and how you're comparing with the other sellers and all that's going on with repricing your textbooks.
Okay, yeah. So do you... it sounds like you get very granular with your strategy. Maybe in like the months before January and September, you're focusing more on textbooks. Maybe in November, you're focusing on like Christmas books. I don't know whether you do that with other seasonal items and things like that. But do you kind of drive strategy to your VAs in that way? Like, how do you go about changing the strategy as the year goes on, or do you have like SOPs almost for throughout the year for your team to follow, if that makes sense? Okay,
so before I say SOPs, do you have SOPs? You have them written down for your VAs? Is that what you do?
I don't have SOPs just because I created a couple and then they got outdated really quickly. So all I have at the moment is I have something called a book selling Bible, where I and the team put lots of like nuggets of wisdom in, and then sometimes we'll put processes in that we think are going to last maybe a little bit longer than 6 months. But it's not a super long document. It's not super detailed, because I know that the team either aren't going to read it, or it's maybe going to become irrelevant. So I probably don't. Maybe I don't know if I don't do enough of that, but that's why I was interested to see your kind of viewpoint on how you do things.
Okay, so here's what here's my suggestion is don't write down a lot of the stuff. Instead, make videos for them. My team loves videos, and there is, if they don't do something correctly, it's not because they didn't know how to do it. Because I have created. Now, if you look at my YouTube, I'm not talking about my YouTube channel. I don't know how many videos I have. Probably less than 50. I've created over 1,200 videos, and the vast majority of those are for my team on how to do different things. We got a list of exactly what everybody's supposed to do every day. So a link to the training video. And so in some cases, some things we have it documented as well. But when things change, when they change quickly, I'll make a new video. I just made a video this morning for them on, an enhancement that we made that makes our process just a little bit faster. So I do that all the time. So that's what I do. And they really like it. And I ask them very specifically, do you like the written, because then sometimes I'll make a video and I'll tell them to make a written document off of the video. And it's pretty quick for me to do, but it's very accurate. They know exactly what to click on, what to do. So that's how I do it. This team seems to like it, and the quality is very, very good.
Yeah, I have started doing that recently. So, but your 1,200 videos massively. I think I've done about not even 100, probably about 80. So I've clearly got a lot of work to do, and it shows because. Sorry, go on.
No. I was just say, don't compare yourself to me. Some of those videos are for customers. Your Master Book Flippers customers. I made lots of videos for them and things, but the vast majority of them are, and they get outdated, like you just said, right? So some of them, I keep them. I don't delete them ever. Just keep them and archive them or whatever. If I want to look back how we did a process, I'll know exactly how I did it. But it's very, very helpful, and it's easy for them to understand exactly what to do.
Yeah. It makes total sense, because even though I've written certain things down very detailed on this Bible, I feel like the point doesn't necessarily get across with say a repricing rule that I want to implement, but the video works so much better. So I'm definitely going to work on doing more videos in future. Do you use something like Loom? Because I use Loom at the moment.
Yep, that's exactly what I use. I was one of the early adopters of that. I have whatever they have, the Pro plan, so I've got unlimited amount of videos that I can make, and then I even make videos for myself. There's okay, I need to do something that only I do, and I don't do it that often. Like, for example, deleting. What do we do? Delete. I don't know if you do this, Seth, but after a while, I'll delete some books that haven't that I don't have inventory on Amazon after like 6 months. Maybe I have a good system to do that in bulk. I don't do it one at a time. I think I've got lots of videos, but I specifically make self-reference videos as well for myself, because sometimes I forget on how the heck I did something, or even the rationale as to why I did something.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the fact that you can record unlimited videos for, I think it's $10 a month. It's pretty crazy value, I think.
Yeah,
so
it
hopefully
really
listeners will use that, even if you haven't got a team, as you say. It's useful just for yourself, your own personal. It's almost like a diary, like you mentioned before, of your business. It's like a diary of things that you need to do, kind of.
Right.
No, that's super interesting. I'm already thinking that I need to get cracking on lots of different things now. But going back to like strategy then throughout the year. So are you constantly recording videos of? So like maybe like it'll be like a weekly video. This week I want to focus more on buying textbooks, or do you do things like that, or?
I actually don't. I have a lot of algorithms, and I do some things that are even hard to explain, even if I wanted to, on exactly what we do. But let me say this. You bring up a good point, Seth. So some of my Master Book Flippers customers, when they leave, and believe it or not, some of them do leave, but I'll ask them, why did you leave? And some of them have said, I remember a couple of people said, well, it's coming up upon textbook season. I want to buy a lot of textbooks, and yet I don't see, we have something called Diamond Flips. I don't see a lot of textbooks in there. So I thought about it, and I looked, I'm very data driven. I went back and looked, and we were putting out way too many non-textbooks at a time in which we should be buying textbooks. We should be buying textbooks, providing our customers, not only for our customers, but also for my own business. So I change things in the background. I don't necessarily tell them what to look for. I will change things in the background. I use, randomized data. We do all kinds of funky things in the background so that I want to make things as easy and as consistent for my team so they can just, they know what to do. So I don't put out a regular video on this is the way we're going to do it. No. They're going to do it pretty consistently every time, except if we have, a process change. But they do not need to worry about what time of the year it is in terms of, what books to look at. I figure that all out for them, sort of with algorithms in the background.
Okay, cool. So a question just popped into my head there. So a few people listening, like you said earlier, are going to be total beginners on Amazon. They might want to get started with books. They're not necessarily going to have the algorithm power or the team power behind them to be able to source books. Like, what would your advice be to a beginner newbie bookseller, like, to get started if they're kind of low budget?
Okay, if they're on a low budget. Well, I think first when people come in to think about selling, I'll put in quotes, selling used books on Amazon, they should think about what business model they want to do. A lot of people, and maybe you see this less than I do, Seth, because I'm in the States, but a lot of people just want to, or they gravitate towards using a scanner and going to the bookstore to source the books. They don't gravitate, or some of them don't even know about doing what you and I do, online book arbitrage for whatever reason. And there's far more people that do that business model. So if you then do online book arbitrage, so if you have a very low budget, you are going to have to, or you probably should not do online book arbitrage, and you should go out and, go to the store and, use a scanner to source books, or, buy a Gaylord for, what a Gaylord is, right? Seth, right? Sure. A big box of books, right? That might be your cheapest way to get started. I would caution you, though. I would say the one tool that people don't talk about enough is a stopwatch. You need to keep track of your time, on how much time you are spending doing any business, right? And you're going to spend more time. You're going to get better over time, but. So that's why I don't like doing that, right? And that's the other thing. Some people don't want to, Seth, they don't want to sit in front of a computer either, right? And source books that way. So you have to start somewhere. But if you have a little bit more than, I don't know that there's an exact dollar figure I could give you. If you've got less than, $500, you probably I would save up. But you can still learn a lot, right? So you can learn about doing books and selling on Amazon. There's so many, I think we live in such tremendous times that people don't realize, where, the average person can go ahead and start a business and have $1 million business inside of a few years you don't need to go to college. You don't need any specialized training. What you do need is, you need some tenacity, which I think is what probably you and I have, right? Like I said to myself, I am going to replace this well-paying job that I had, corporate job, and I didn't have a whole lot of money to do it either, right? But, and a willingness to learn, right? You have to have a willingness to learn, and you just got to, stick with it.
Super interesting. So I went to an Amazon Seller Conference a few weeks ago in Miami, and it's funny how you say that a lot of people start with the retail book arbitrage, right? And there was probably about 100 people at this conference. I think possibly only 4 or 5 of us even knew about online book arbitrage, right? People hear books and they just assume you're either doing bulk or you're doing the scanning thing. And it just fascinates me how it's still such an untapped thing. Like, does it ever not worry you? But do you still? I don't even know what question to ask, but it's like online books still feels like it's very underground, like no one knows about it still. Do you feel like
absolutely.
that?
Absolutely. I feel as though, but even so, one of the questions I get right away from people is, do you share the same book leads? I'm like, what? I'm saying to myself at the back, you don't have enough money to buy all the books that are out there. I don't have, and that's why I started Master Book Flippers in the first place, right? I had VAs working for me. I didn't have enough money to buy it. And truthfully, over time, it became like a video game. Sourcing books for me, online, and sometimes I got bored of it. So that's why I've got people, they buy books, they do almost the whole business for me. But to answer your question, you're right. They don't know about doing online book arbitrage, and but I don't worry about I don't worry about that at all as far as it becoming oversaturated. I mean, people been saying that about private label and all these other business models with Amazon's for a long time. But I think the big advantage you have of doing online book arbitrage over, let's just compare it to books, is, you'll have people that go out, they spend all day outside, they buy a bunch of books, they've spent, $40, $50 worth of gas nowadays, right? They spend an awful lot of time. Then you come home and you got to list all the books. Then you got to ship them to Amazon. There's a lot of work involved. And with that business model, you will have higher ROIs, but your profit per book is much lower. But there are people that they want to do it, sort of as a hobby, and they enjoy, the hunt. Then stick with that, right? They like it. It's almost like I said, kind of a hobby of going out to, whether it's a garage sale or whatever, and finding these deals. I think that's great if that's what you want to do. Like I said, some people said to me, I asked them, why did you quit our service? I said, Victor, I can't sit in front of the computer, right? Just not me. So it's not for everybody. But, I treat this as like a business. I don't get emotional with the books. On occasion, you're going to lose some money on those books. Who cares? You just move on and, find the next one. So I don't know if I answered your question, Seth. I don't remember what it was at this point.
No, I think that's great. I don't think I even had a question, but what you said there that's so valuable. I think people don't realise, don't get attached to your books, because I think when starting out, a lot of people do, right? And I know I definitely did. I got attached to certain books that I thought were going to sell better, and I'm annoyed when I've got to reduce the price. And I also got attached to books that I only just missed the alert on, right? Where I could have maybe made $100 profit on, and that used to really frustrate me, because before I had a VA, obviously it was just me. So I'd go to sleep and I'd wake up in the morning and I'd get a few keeper alerts, like really good ones that I've obviously missed. And I was like angry that, I should have only slept for 4 hours kind of thing, even though it's just totally irrational. I mean, that's right. Probably why I've got team working around the clock. But it's funny that you say it's like a video game, because I think that's why I did it for like 2.5 years without a team member, because I was just enjoying like the hunt so much. But that wears off after you sell so many thousands of books, right? But it's interesting. I feel like you've got to have that enjoyment of books to get properly dive into it.
Right. And the other thing, going back to I guess comparing this business model, aside from doing books, if you're doing like wholesale, or you're doing replenishables, or you're doing private label, I just think the risk is so much lower and the sourcing is so much better, and the ROIs are better. So, I don't hear from my customers saying, I can't find any books to source, right? But you will find that continuously, and people spend hours and hours doing that with other business models. And it's sort of selling used books, Seth, right? As you know, I think like we're sort of going below the radar, right? In private label, there are so many, you become a target as you become bigger. And that doesn't happen really with selling used books. Like, you and I are competitors, but everyone can do well selling used books. And so there's that. I just think it's such a great business model that a lot of people don't know about. And the reason they don't know about it is there's not a ton of money out there. When you go onto YouTube, there's not a ton of advertising for services. I don't do a good enough job, talking about my own service. So people, like you said, people don't know about it, but obviously people are going to gravitate towards what they see, and they see an awful lot of private label. They see selling used books and other business models, etc.
Yeah, and I just always think that books just isn't sexy, and there's no one proclaiming that they're making, $50 million a year in books, right? So that's probably why. And there's no one like selling got Instagram pages where they're driving Lambos from book selling, right? So I feel like that creates a certain image about an industry, good or bad. And I feel like books hasn't had that, and I doubt it ever will. I mean, I can't see it really happening. It's just not sexy, right?
Yeah, and I don't know. Some part of me says some people just don't talk about it. I have some customers. They are not on Facebook. They've been with me for a year, 2 years or longer, and they just come in and day out. And they may be much bigger than me. I don't know. I don't know what they're doing, but there's no reason for them to, they don't want to go on Facebook, or they just do, they know, what they're doing. It's very repeatable business. That's what I like, where you're not always looking for another, what's the hottest trend out there? What's the new Barbie going to be this Christmas season? You don't have to worry about any of that. It's just very consistent. You're selling used books, and there's always going to be opportunities.
Always, yeah. It fascinates me how, if I look on a listing, there might be a ton of FBA sellers, and then some of them might have 100 reviews, some of them might have 1,000, some of them have got 50,000. They're clearly all doing a very similar thing to us, but they must be making money, right? So it goes to show that for people that are wondering that it could get saturated, the pie is definitely big enough for everyone. Right? If you can buy millions of a product repeatably as well, it does fascinate me. A question that's just come into my head actually: do you obviously all books are replenishable, right? Like, how much do you focus on replenishable books? Is that like a big part of your business, or are you just sourcing, like your algorithm just sources for books that are maybe they get listed at a certain price and you're looking at the average price? Or because I'm always looking for replenishables, right?
No, I purchased the same book tons of times. I remember there's one, this is what's getting back, and I think I've done it more so, I don't know about you, Seth, more so with non-text books than with textbooks, where I'll buy, maybe I'll buy multiple copies of the textbook, but, over a year or whatever, maybe I'll buy like 40 copies of the same book. And then you really know what that book's going to sell for. So we have some, pretty sophisticated algorithms and things that can pick up. So I know, when we sold it, how much we sold it for, how many times we've sold a book, all that stuff. So yeah, we do look at that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's just a part of it. It's not our main focus at all, but it's just, it's just part of it.
Because there's so many strategies to. It's what fascinates me more. It's like we're looking at one category on Amazon, and there are so many different ways of making money with this one category, right? You can focus on textbooks, you can focus on non-textbooks, you can focus on like seasonality, seasonal books. You could probably make money just selling. I've thought about this. You could probably make quite a lot of money if you just focused on maybe like Bibles or a certain category that you have noticed that you've made good profits in, right? And you just like zone in on that completely.
Yeah, right. Now that's you've kind of given people a tip though, that some people, and I've actually met with, I speak to people on the phone, but I've actually met with some people in person. But and I know you've heard this term, the shiny object syndrome, and it's a real thing where people, they see a YouTube video. Oh, I'm going to do cryptocurrency today. Then tomorrow I'm going to do wholesale. My suggestion is focus in on one thing, whatever the heck it might be, and you're probably going to find yourself a lot more successful in the long run. I've decided to become an expert at, on flipping used books. That's what I do, right? And if used books went away, maybe I'd focus in on something else. So yeah, very powerful though, but you've got to take action, obviously.
Yeah, I think about and talk about this topic very often, which is the shiny object syndrome, and there are always opportunities that come up where you think, oh, maybe the grass is greener, maybe I should try this thing. And I've thought about trying wholesale and private label a bunch of times, and I have always, I think fortunately so far, always come back to the thought that, well, this is going really well, why don't I try and scale this further rather than starting something new? Because you've got a few different projects going though, right? So I've only got books and maybe like a couple of other things. So is books your like main focus, and you've chosen that to be your main focus, and then the other things you do are kind of like side hobbies, or do you just like having you like to spin a few different plates? And like, how do you manage with that as well?
Well, there's a lot of questions there. Yeah, I'm still struggling with that as far as how I manage all things. So the books is just a part of my business. I have master book flippers, and then I do some consulting on other things. So yeah, so I am really busy. But I do always gravitate back towards books, and because if I'm when you called me for this, I think I was in Las Vegas, right? And that's one of the reasons I love doing books and outsourcing, most of the business, is that while I was away, nothing suffered. We still purchased books, we listed books, we shipped books, still had sales, everything, right? So so there's no reason for me to, to gravitate away from it. And I guess starting out, going back to what you had asked me earlier on the advice for new folks, is people don't think about this is, first of all, how much time are you going to spend in the business? I think in the long run, and don't think that you need to do this off the bat, right? You don't need to hire virtual assistants out of the bat. You do everything yourself, learn it, and then outsource it. That's what I recommend. That's what I've done. But at the end of the day, are you going to have, if you were to open up a pie shop, let's just say, at some point you're probably going to want to sell it, right? And I think an online book arbitrage business where you have things very systematized, which I have, is far more likely to be sold at some point in the future than a business of you going to local stores with a scanner, right? I don't know who's going to want to buy your business, even though it may be very profitable. So I always took a long-term approach to this business that I've built.
So speaking of long-term approach, I'd love to know, what are your plans for the next year, 3-5 years? I assume you think about that stuff because you seem to be very organized.
Yeah, I plan on not being as busy as I am. That's one thing, right? So as you start getting into more things, you need to learn. I'm sure you've heard this, Seth, right? You need to learn to say no. And unfortunately, I've had some people, I don't do a good job in some areas where I'd like to coach some people more. I don't have the time I would like, so I want to try to make some more time for those types of things in the future. But and I'm always looking to improve, right? So do I have very specific goals? I'd like to grow my master book flippers business some more. But I think I don't think people, I think I may have said this already, but it's just exciting times. I feel very excited to be, living during this time with the technology and things that we, like for an example, let's say Amazon stopped selling books tomorrow, right? I would lose out on 2 businesses, but this may sound strange to people. I would be very excited because then I know, okay, I'm going to learn something new. I don't know what the heck it is, or whether I'm selling on Amazon, but I will be doing something else. But probably lower on my list would be go to get another corporate job, right? But I could certainly do that if I needed to.
Oh, that's really interesting. You said, and that's just a super growth mindset, positive way to look at things. If Amazon shut down today, you'd be excited for tomorrow because you've got something new to learn. Like, where do you think you got that from? Like, did you get that from books, like your family growing up, things like that? Because not many people most people would be crying if Amazon shut down today, right?
I guess maybe it's more of a freedom thing, right? I guess the worst thing that I would feel is that I have a group of people that rely upon me for their income, my virtual assistant team. So that would be by far the worst thing. Amazon's not shutting down their book business anytime soon. I'm pretty sure of that. So I'm not really worried about it. But I guess, Seth, to answer you, where did I get that from? I don't know. Some people, I am a little different in that I like change. A lot of people don't like change. I'm one that I do embrace it. I look at it as a challenge. So I wish I had a really good answer. I probably have to go to a psychologist or something to figure that one out. Like, where did that come from? I don't really know, but I always want to try to do things as efficiently as possible, and I embrace new stuff all the time.
Yeah, because it sounds like you were really good at your jobs and you enjoyed them, and you started a business, you sold it, you've been successful throughout. Have you had any big obstacles where you really struggled and thought, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make this work or anything like that?
Let me see. Yeah, I guess maybe more so when I was doing the private label, right? I was getting sales and all that, but, and that's when I started looking at other things and I transitioned where, at some point you have to, you have to cut ties, but at the same time, maybe I had the wrong product, there's all kinds of things. But I wasn't in a financial position to continue going down that road anymore. So that's when I pivoted my approach. So yeah. I don't mind doing that.
Yeah, but I suppose it kind of goes against the focus thing, right? So you did think about potentially going into other products with private label?
Yeah, I did.
I did.
Yeah, I didn't just do one product. I did have a bunch of different products, and I always kept up. I listened to lots of podcasts, and I heard a lot of different things. And I'm the type of person, I don't just want to, I want to validate what the things that I hear, and I don't always, I always say, like, if I was going for a job interview and they tell me, they really want me, and they tell me it's a great, I always ask them, what's the downside? Tell me the bad part, right? Because I want to know, because this is a business, and some people come into it and they don't understand that, and they think that they're going to buy a book, they're going to sell it, and everything's going to be honky-dory, and that's just going to happen every single day, and it's all seamless. And no, there's definitely work involved in any business. So yeah, for me, I think it was that moment when I looked at it and said, okay, private label wasn't really for me, or wasn't really what I thought it was going to be. I'd rather have something, and I really wrote those things down, Seth. I said, okay, I want something that's scalable. I can work anytime, anywhere. And it's not, it's not easy to find, right? If you think about what kind of business is scalable, you can work anywhere, anytime, you can outsource all this stuff, right? And I landed on doing used books, and, I've been doing it for a while, and it works well.
No, it's super powerful. You say that you essentially wrote, you were kind of almost manifesting what you wanted. You wrote it down, and you were allowing the universe to look for you. But which is funny, because I kind of just stumbled into it, and it's ended up working out really well, which I guess I guess I think I got lucky, whereas you've kind of, it looks like you've systematically found books and it's worked for you, which is interesting. Yeah, but you mentioned podcasts, so you listen to lots of podcasts. Would you say that's the most impactful source of information that you found with getting into like business in general, or like succeeding in life, I guess? Or like, do you read books or anything? Have you got any recommendations?
I wish I read more books. I don't read as much as I would like, but if you're starting a business, one book I would recommend, I don't know if you've heard it, is Profit First. So that's have you heard of that book, Seth?
I've heard of it. I think it's on my list to read. Yeah, I've not read it.
Okay, so, that's a really good book just on running a business, a profitable business. So, for example, I just here in the States, we just had April 15th roll around. I owed thousands of dollars in taxes, right? But that was fine. I had money set aside. So it really talks, it's really good for really all businesses, but it just gives you peace of mind that, you're following the right path from a financial perspective on, setting aside money, making sure that you're making a profit, right? Making sure that you're able to pay your bills, your tax bills, and all these other things. So, really good book. There's that one. The Compound Effect is another one. I don't know if you've heard that one. That's a good one, not only for business, but just in general. So take that small steps, right? If somebody is just starting out, don't compare yourself to me or Seth or anybody else. You take those small steps, okay? Your budget only requires you to buy 10 books, this week. Maybe you buy, you just keep leveling it up, and next thing you know, you can compound what you've done and continue to grow. So there's that. And the other one I know you've probably heard, which is the E-Myth Revisited. Really good book for people that, talks really about working on your business instead of in your business, right? So for some folks, they really want to work in their business. That's fine, right? They just want to take something that was kind of like a job and just work it as a job. And for some people, that's okay. It's not what my interest was, so I kind of want to work on my business where I've got, like you have your SOPs, I've got my videos and all that, right? You've got things documented, you've got a business going on, and you have other people doing much of the work for you.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and will recommend The Compound Effect. And for anyone listening, it's a pretty short book as well. It won't take you very long to read, and it's quite powerful. E-Myth Revisited, I only read very recently, probably a month and a half ago, and I felt like I already knew the lessons from that book. But I wish I'd read that 2 years ago or 3 years ago for sure, because that would have been really impactful, and it probably would have propelled my journey forward a lot faster.
Yeah, I was definitely in the same boat with that book. I had already, had people working for me trying to outsource it, but, gives you some good validation and gives you really good examples. So if you're new to business, that might be a good book to start with.
Yeah, if you're new and you feel like you're doing too much busy work, that will definitely be that's the ideal person to read, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you for that. And I want to be respectful of your time, but I would like to, for the book nerds, I'd like to touch on one last topic of repricing, because I know
Sure.
that the people who are just booksellers, it's I mean, we talked just before off air that it's still an ongoing process for you, which I think is great for listeners to know, because it's the same for me. I'm sure every single bookseller, however well you're doing, pricing is always going to be one of the most important things you do, and it's you're never going to complete it, right? So it's a hot topic for me, particularly because I'm building my team, I've got more inventory, they're spending lots of time repricing, and I don't think they're doing it optimally. They're not even necessarily doing it that well at times. Sometimes I'll look at some books and they're just pricing far too high. So I was just wanted to ask you, like, what your process currently is with pricing and repricing. How do you approach it? I'm happy to talk about how I approach it after as well, if you want to discuss. But yeah, if you could and I know it's a really in-depth topic, but if you could maybe synthesize what you can.
So I guess, yeah, that was a good segue. So long story short is pricing and repricing is not so simple as some people try to make it like two little variables. The first thing I want to know when I reprice a book is I want to know what type of book is it. Is it a textbook? Is it a non-textbook? And Seth, I think having folks to price for you is difficult. You're absolutely right. And even if you price what I sometimes have done, I've logged the FBA prices, like especially on textbooks during textbook season, and you'd be surprised how much it changes or it doesn't change. It can be all over the place sometimes. So it isn't easy to do. And I know that you can say, well, there's a repricer. The problem with any repricer is what they don't do is what you touched upon, Seth, is they don't establish the price, right? The minimum or the maximum. So what I found over time, Seth, and I do this, for my Master Book Flippers customers, I want them to be successful. I want them to be with me for a long time. And I know there's a lot of FBA sellers that they flat out don't know what they're doing when it comes to pricing. And they'll price just because somebody else is priced really, really high. So what I try to do, what we do, at least with our diamond flips and when we're doing our book research, is I use algorithms to try to figure out what that top level price might be. Now, is that a perfect system? No. So in other words, I might say, sell this book at $85. Meanwhile, the next highest seller is selling it at $159. But I think that $159 is way too high because of my experience, and I'm a data-driven guy. That doesn't mean that that price that I suggest or that I might sell at $85, but someone else might want to sell it higher. So it's never going to be, there's no perfect price out there for pricing. But, the way we do it, I use, and I think I talk about this on one of my videos, but I use Amazon's repricer. I've tried using other repricers. The downside that I've found is that people may or may not know this. Amazon only shares, I think, the 20 lowest prices in their API, so that's what the repricer has to use. So because I'm data driven, I don't just put something into a repricer and don't look at it. I was looking at the repricer and saying to myself, why didn't the repricer reprice these books at all? And it was because of that reason, because Amazon doesn't share all the data. So the repricer is up against the wall and they can't do their job, as well as we would like. So that's why I use Amazon's repricer. Amazon's repricer isn't perfect either, but if you can rope it in, which is kind of how I do it with some algorithms and some all kinds of other things, I'm able to, if I want to, raise my prices every single day. And, it's really about managing the minimum and maximum prices, I think, is a big part of it. But you're right, Seth. It's difficult to give to somebody else unless they're, I don't know. I think if I looked at a book and said, how am I going to reprice it? I look at that same book with the same data 2 weeks from now, I'm not going to give you the exact same answer, right? It might be off a little bit if I'm just looking at it with my eyes.
Yeah, it's so subjective. And as you say, your decision might change over 2 weeks. Mine might change over the course of a day, which is why I've tried to record looms just discussing kind of the high level ways that I look at it, it will be, I'll open up the keeper chart, I'll look at where the drops have been recently, and I'll kind of see that maybe the highest drops at $60, the lowest drops at whatever 30. If we bought that book for 10 to 15 bucks, I'm happy to put the minimum at like 10% profit margin and then put the maximum $60, something like that. But I've just found that clearly I either need to do more in-depth videos, or I need to do something different, or I'm wrestling with the idea of telling my team just to set the minimum at a certain percentage profit margin for the first 30 days and then drop that over time. And then I'm potentially thinking about doing that with a maximum. But then the problem you roll into is if you've bought the book for $5, but it could sell for 100, then if you put your profit margin at a maximum of 40%, then you're missing out of a higher dollar amount, right? So, like, what would you say to? Would you ever want to adopt a more systematized, say, profit margin based rule? Would you always want human eyes on your listings for repricing?
No, actually, I do that for more than for non-textbooks. I do very similar to what you just said. Over time, if a book is not selling, I will drop the price over time, right? I'm still looking at the other competition, but over time, I will drop the price in general. With textbooks, that is usually a mistake because, you're going to have ebbs and flows with the supply and the demand, and the demand's going to go up tremendously, usually 2 times a year. And it depends, right? Some textbooks you can't just say, when should I reprice my textbooks? You need to look at the keeper chart. Sometimes you can buy textbooks in the middle of textbook season and it's no problem because that's a very strong selling textbook that's going to sell a lot in May, June, and it's just going to sell even more in the other coming months. So we will go in and we'll go in and look at the other FBA competition and where we stand compared to others, right? So there's definitely a lot of variables and any repricer, including Amazon's, is not the silver bullet. What I've gotten better at is spending a whole lot less time and systematizing all of it, and maybe at some point I'll try to share that more openly with people on how I do it. But like I told you earlier, I'm always tweaking it a little bit. I'll give you one quick example. Like suddenly you'll see that the price went up a lot. The lowest used price and the lowest FBA went up a lot. And if you look at the keeper chart very closely, that occurred because Amazon just they were selling the new copy at, let's say, $20. Now they're out of stock. So now, Seth, the question is, well, how long should I wait? Are they going to be in stock? Is Amazon going to be in stock and start selling again at $20? In which case you were trying to sell it at $40 or $50 and the book was selling then. So there's no perfect answer because you don't know when Amazon, unless you can figure that out, when Amazon's going to come in stock again with a new book. But that can be a reason why a book jumps up very quickly in price. The demand might go down a little bit, but the price can go up quite a bit. And it's hard for me to even train a VA or anyone else on what the right answer to that is. I don't know.
There's so many unpredictable variables, and there are a lot of things to teach VAs with used books, aren't there? And that's what makes it difficult, but also makes it exciting, I guess. But yeah. So one last question on pricing. So is your overall strategy? Let's talk non-textbooks. So textbooks are different because they're seasonal, and you might want to buy in June and sell in August or September or whatever. But with non-textbooks, will you generally sacrifice profit margin or profit to turn the book over, or if you know that the FBA is at a low average, would you wait to sell for like an extra 30 days? So like, do you prefer sell-through rate or higher profits?
Well, my advice to anybody would be it depends upon. One thing we need to look at is, what do they call it? The IPI score, right? And it needs to be above 400, right? So, mine is well above that, so I don't worry about it. So maybe I could sit on a book a little bit longer. But in general, I'd say, Seth, my strategy is to sell the book a little bit quicker. And not everyone's going to agree with that, nor should they, right? Sometimes you do want to sit on a book a little bit longer and maybe wait for it to sell. But The flip side of that coin is, the longer you sit on it, maybe it's actually going to go down, but you kind of have to look at the keep it chart on an individual basis. But in general, I'm really more about, selling books all the time. And, one metric people should try to pay attention to is, like you said, the sell-through rate, the turn rate, whatever you want to call it. So that's something I'll look at weekly. Say, okay, what percentage of my books that I had in stock did they sell? How many sold this past week or month, or however you want to measure it? So that will sometimes dictate to how we're going.
Yeah, and obviously it depends on the book. Sometimes a mega seller like Jensen Books will jump in at $20 or something, even though the book consistently sells for 80 or 90. So there are individual anomalies, but on the whole, I agree with you. I'd much rather sell through the book, because you don't know if you can pick up that book again, right, next week. And if you've still got a copy, you might not want to buy another copy, right? So that's why I always think sell through is super important.
Right. It's like what we talked about earlier, right? You don't become emotionally attached. I mean, I've made mistakes. I made a mistake of buying a book in that same scenario. I spent less than, it was selling for, the low price was like $89. I was able to buy it for less than $9. I bought 10 copies, and then what ended up happening is the new copies came in from Amazon out of the blue, selling it at $14. So, and I knew that was a high-risk book at the time I purchased it, right? At least I knew what I was getting myself involved in, right? So, that those type of things are going to happen. If that probably was a bad buy on my part. But I don't want to use the word greedy, right? But I thought that, okay, I'll sell it for, $70, $80 and do great with this one, with a bunch of copies. Very simple. But, those things are going to happen, but I didn't get emotionally tied. I just move on, right?
But it was a lesson learned, and the beauty of books is that you didn't have to pay too much for the stock, whereas in wholesale, you might have spent, in that particular example, you might have spent $30 per unit or 40 or something like that.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we've been chatting for over an hour now, and I know you've got a meeting coming up, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. I really appreciate you having on. I could honestly talk for hours longer about books, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of people got good value from this. But if people want to find you, do you want to plug what you want to plug? Where can people find you and things like that?
Sure. Yeah, they can reach me at masterbookflippers.com. That's 2 P's. youtube.com/masterbookflippers. And I think we're on Instagram and Twitter. On Facebook, facebook.com/masterbookflippers. And you can even call me, 727-203-5515. So as I make this video, I do take phone calls, believe it or not. I had somebody call me last week just to say I didn't think you were going to answer the phone, and I did. So I expect to hopefully hear from some people, right? Take action like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I really hope some people will take you up on that, because I don't think many people would give out their phone on YouTube very often. So that's awesome. But so have you got anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
No, just I wish everybody well. It's again, don't compare yourself to what everybody else is doing, and you're going to start off small, but if you just stick with it, you can do really well. And it is, there's always, I don't say success for me is never final, right? I'm continually getting better, but having been in the corporate world in the 9 to 5 for many, many years, I wouldn't trade this for anything. Very, very excited about the prospects of the business that I have and with the future.
Awesome. Sage advice. Thank you very much again for coming on, and I'm sure people are going to get lots of value from it. But I'll leave you here, and I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, great. Thanks, Seth. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you've made it this far, you may as well leave this video a like if you've been watching on YouTube. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for future episode updates. Or if you've been listening on Apple Podcasts, it would be absolutely amazing if you could leave us a review, as that makes a world of difference. Thank you again, and I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao for now.